Hello, everybody. As you can
Hi.
see, we're animating today. And this is the extent to the level that the animation is going to be. I may, if people really like the idea of it, I will color it in and do stuff later. But you saw what we're going to get to, but you can still kind of see what we're going over. And what we're going over is just like when we did the Mike Mignola art style breakdown, and we went over not so much how to draw like him, but what to learn from him. I want to look at Spencer Wan. He has a studio now called Studio Grackle. He worked on Boruto, as you can see, Owl House, Castlevania, lots of stuff. And what I think is really worth learning from his style specifically, he's what you would call a Sakuga style animator, which means more budget, more time goes into it, it's supposed to stand out. But what makes that so cool is his understanding of timing and key posing. So
Is that what is that a key essence of what Sakuga style is?
so
just the
honestly,
timing?
it's a key essence of animation overall. Sakuga, like I said, literally just means better quality, basically. I don't know if that's what the literal translation is, but Sakuga animation is like, you know how in Dragon Ball, like a lot of their dialogue is like standing very still and just like moving mouths?
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, you got that smooth, baby butt smooth punch. That baby butt smooth punch is Sakuga.
Okay.
So, and like I said, it's all of it gets better. The drawing itself gets better sometimes, but a lot of times, like I said, it's that timing that lets it feel better, and it's the amount of drawings put into it. Shut up, phone.
Mute it.
But yeah, and it's not just, and I think in Spencer stuff specifically, as you may have noticed, there's only so many poses really. Like with this one where she's like crawling out of the mirror, you have one look, two grab, three pull through, but it feels lively because of all the other stuff going on around it, the hair, the tentacles, the goop, and that adds life to it. So, and if you watch Castlevania, what do they have a shit ton of in there? Fucking cloaks, capes,
So much cloaks and capes.
magic, the whip. Like, look at that. He basically just has three poses, a wind up, the jump, and then the end pose. But the whip and the cape keep moving. And if you do things right, you can make it so you're only animating certain layers. This one right here, again, there's really only like one, and there's still a lot of redrawing that goes into it, but that griffin flying through the water, it was basically just the one pose, but the wings and the water effects go through. So in this project, which I only sped it up, I think 3 times, just because, may as well hustle through. We're taking the Inktober prompt spider, and we're going to focus on something that, like I said, has minimal. You have your main key poses. You get to and from those key poses, but you can have other things that really light it up. And so, started out just with some warm-ups. I don't remember what I was thinking. I was trying to come up with ideas, I think. But
What would be
yeah.
what would be your estimate for how long this particular style of animation would
Forever. This is the stuff, like, this is the reason why animation is done digitally now, and you can copy and paste. Like, this is the stuff that this is why Japanese anime industry is a nightmare. Because this is the position you want, because it pays the most, because you're the most qualified. But it's death incarnate. Because when you do those key poses, they have to be drawn well. Mm-hmm. And then you're doing, again, if it's 20 seconds, times that by 24, that's like 200, 20 by 24, that's like 200,
480.
480 drawings. So, and again, you can use digital layers and everything to make it easier. We've talked about that before. We can talk about it again in Clip Studio specifically now, since our pipeline has changed a little bit. But yeah, every step you have to do well in. Like, I'm doing these thumbnails because even though this is just a quick sketch practice, you need to go in knowing what you're doing. You need to know your beginning, middle, end before you actually start the beginning, even almost. So and this is another thing. When you're thinking about scenes, especially if you want it to be a really impactful scene, you should have an animation that looks kind of cool as an illustration. So if you can get the idea of your animation across in one thumbnail, that's a good start. So, again, this is going to stay rough, but it's going to let us talk about things. A good perspective, too. You know, there's a lot of really great, especially stick figure Newgrounds animations where it's like just a profile shot fight. It's like a wide shot and them just jumping around with this one camera angle. And that can be really cool. But again, at that point, you're really banking on very good animation and you're not hiding anything, which skillful, worthwhile, but think about the things that can give you impacts. And one of those things that we didn't mention while we were on the Google page is perspective. Perspective in animation does a lot because what are we replicating in animation? Motion and life, right?
Yeah.
You argue the same thing for comics. You want a story that immerses you, so you're trying to replicate life.
Exactly.
And you don't normally go through life seeing things in a plain side profile thing. It has a vibe and it has its place. But if you want to get the best bang for your... Because again, this isn't about working harder necessarily. This isn't about just going into the grind and trying harder and harder and harder. It's about how to work efficiently. Because again, this is going to take a long time no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So make your life simpler. I know very rarely do we say make your life simple, draw in perspective. But look at this. I basically just have my ground plane. It's low to the ground because I know I'm going to have my character jump. I have a giant spider up top, which is going to frame the character.
Gotcha.
And you're making sure you have a solid rule of thirds. My character is going to mainly stay in the middle there, again, framed by this giant spider.
Are there any other point of reference or types of shortcuts that would make it more efficient, or do you have to be like so meticulous into making sure that it flows well?
I mean, column A and column B for sure, I think. Because, like, there are shortcuts and tips and tricks you can use, but if you rely solely on them and you don't actually make your technique better, it gets obvious. Gotcha. So, work smart, work hard. You use the tips and tricks, but make sure that you're using them well. So if you're being lazy in one way, that has to be so that you can do something else better, like the reason why we don't voice act in HitCam anymore. We weren't making it wasn't really adding so much, so we decided let's take that out so we can dedicate more time to what we can do that makes the show good. And again, look here. When I say animating in perspective, I'm just starting the guy small and the guy is bigger. So these are my primary keyframes here. And again, if you have your beginning and your end relatively solid, it's not like the perspective isn't that hard.
Oh.
So, and the perspective can be made better by like an actual background, have some trees in the distance or something. If it's rain, you can get some of that verticality going. The camera can add a lot to perspective, especially if you have a good pan in or a zoom, a rack focus even. There's a lot of tricks you can do here to keep making it better. But again, it's making this solid foundation better. And if you do notice, in Clip Studio, again, I've talked about it before, I'll talk about it again, you can animate with folders and have a lot of layers going. And that can make, especially the rough pass, so much easier on yourself. So even if you don't, like, you can either A, have one layer so that you always have, like, your base pose and you can animate around it, which was kind of my intent here. I was originally going to give this guy a cloak and everything, but I wanted to keep it to work. All this work, by the way, what you're saying, was less than an hour of drawing.
Well, wait. Less than an hour?
Yeah. This whole animation was less than an hours of work. So.
How?
I work again. I had a plan, and I use these layers. So like I said, there's gonna be things that I don't redraw as much because this is rough. I don't need it to. I don't need when you're doing rough or storyboarding stuff. If the face disappears, that's fine because you have your keyframes that show it, and if you were to clean it up, you can kind of fill that in later. Or that keyframe is good enough that you remember where that is. That's that weird thing with like old pencil tests where it like flickers, but it feels so real.
Oh,
because
yes.
The rest of it is moving around it. So your brain knows the body, the head, the hair, whatever is staying stationary. Or the keyframes are so good, your brain is already filling that in. That's the key to strong animation and strong art. If you take away some parts of it, you can still tell what's going on. Yeah, use layers to your advantage. Don't, copy and paste, trace your onion skin. Uh, you know, don't, because there are going to be so many things that you have to work really hard on. Don't shoot yourself in the foot by doing other stuff. And again, like cleaning this up may be a bear. Like I would definitely have one layer for just the arms, one layer for the face, so that I can kind of do things independently. And then, like I said, drawing in a cloak, cape, hood, whatever is going to add to this. The other thing that really would make this shine is a really cool staggered where the spider falls in half.
Ooh.
So like as he slashes it, if the spider like starts to tear and you see that sinew come apart, again, the main pose of my main character will just be standing there basically.
Yeah.
But then I'll just have this little fall down because that's the thing. You don't even have to have the spider fall in half. If you just have him fall down, he's dead. But that makes it feel alive, and that's what this is. The little things that make you feel alive. Keep the pose simple. Like this is a stick figure, but I can add mass and character and style onto him by putting a hat on him, the costume that he wears. But at the end of the day, it's still a stick figure pose.
But you've already, like, no matter what, you've already had that kind of characterization with the posing itself. You had that kind of emotion already.
Yeah.
Which I think is just really cool.
Oh, yeah. Like so these are the ways that you add to it and keep breathing life into it. So you can see here, like what you're saying, how you already get some character in there. He looked up and he was like, oh, shit, giant spider. But he does his little flip to the sword, which that's another thing. It's a relatively simple action. If you look, when I spin a sword in animation, just like if you practice martial arts, if you spin a sword, it's not normally that complex. He literally flicks it back just a little bit, makes one rotation, and then flicks back into a cool pose. So again, you're looking at pose 1 is him holding the sword out in front of him. Pose 2 is that like anime wind-up shtick.
Gotcha.
To get from those two, you could just put him into it. But it's not actually a whole lot of work to do this little flourish. And that's, again, when I was talking about the cloth and everything, a flourish to add to it. The main action is just the slash. But, if I just animate him ducking down, but I make the sword do a little extra spin, that adds life, character, momentum, anticipation.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
I don't mean to interrupt, but the way that you kind of compared how similar our martial arts is to animation feels so correct.
Yeah.
Because
that's it again.
Yeah, it really is.
I animate sword and martial arts stuff decently, not to do my own horn, but decently because I have reference in just sitting in my brain. I have that library going. If I was to animate cars, I mean, I drive, but I haven't studied that. If I animate a SWAT team, like I can study it and I know some of the basics, but like if it would be nothing compared to if some SEAL Team 6 guy learned how to animate and started going nuts.
Yeah.
That's why, video games are so cool because they often use mocap, so you do have just an actual SEAL Team 6 guy doing runs,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah. But it's just cool in the fact that when you see the final product, you don't see like the actual just step by step. You just see it all blur together.
Yeah. And this part does, like, you can see it getting a little slow. This is where I'm doing a lot of in-between to kind of let the beginning is a lot, like, that beginning motion is so much slower than the ending motion. I feel like a lot of people, they're going to want to spend time on that slash. And you can see, even right now, if you have a slow, smooth wind-up and then a fast jump-cutty action, it almost works in itself. And I probably could, there's a lot of points where I could have left this and it got my point across, but I was having fun.
Isn't that what it's all
about?
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people, they'll want to put the majority of their drawings and their frames in a clash or the slice. And really, that's just not something that you see. So unless you're trying to do a slow motion thing, which one day I'll go over my opinions on how to animate in slow motion, because there is like a science or at least a logic behind it. But you need those frames at the beginning and the after of your action, not the action itself, because that slash has to be fast. That slash is sharp and dramatic. And if you see every inch of the sword cutting through that spider, that's not how physics works. You can't cut through something slow. If you're doing that, you're sawing through it. You're carving now. You're not cutting.
Yeah.
It's not slice. So you give that frame economy to the cool wind up, or the aftermath of him. The sword bobs up and down because you can't stop rigidly like that. I also went ahead and a lot of people might want to animate the character going all the way up, but this is where, think about anime, Bleach, Naruto, Dragon Ball. You don't
shonen animes.
You don't see a character really jump around. You see them start to jump, and then they have that little
disappear.
Yeah, that poof, that puff of smoke, that cross hatching, whatever it is. And as you can see, it works. There's a reason for it. Because again, if you want something to feel fast, you can't see it anymore, which can feel very contradictory because as artists, we draw things. We make you see it. But that's just not how something like this really works. But again, if you're going to do that, you can't just always have your characters dart in and out. Like I think most of us would agree, those anime fights where it is just disappear, punch. Sometimes it's done well, but a lot of times
Dragon Ball.
Yeah, like
Dragon Ball Z.
Like sometimes it works well, but I think a lot of times you can tell it's kind of a cop out or a budget saver because they didn't want to actually do real, quote unquote, real choreography. Mm-hmm. So if I'm gonna not show you him jumping and see him in the air, I gotta make sure that there's payoff in other ways. Again, the flourish. Again, that flourish went really slow, and then boom, darts away. That's, again, anticipation, build-up. Here's where I started to have a little bit of trouble, because, again, I started to fall into it. I started to put a few too many frames into the immediate after of the cut, where there's, like, this weird theoretical stuff going on. Theoretically, he would make that impact, and he would be falling a little less slowly than he would have been at his peak of speed, because he would make impact, slow down a little bit, cut through, and then go fast again. But between the perspective and the pose, I was just starting to get a little too much turned around here, because there is a lot happening. So you're going to see me draw some things, delete some things. And again, animation is just like any other art. You try it out, you see how you think it looks. It's just that, and you just keep on fiddling with it. Again, this is... Again, theoretically, if I was, going to actually animate this, taking my time and doing all of this would make the next step so much easier. Because there's nothing worse than doing, 50 or 100 really good drawings and then having to delete half of them because there's 3 drawings that just broke it. So, and another thing that's going on here is the beauty of that jump and also, like, sword movements, arcs. I haven't mentioned it in a little bit. Animation, motion, and life often happens in arcs. Don't straight line things. Let things happen with a curve. Always think of where you can put a circle into your motion, honestly. Circles are dope.
In a figurative literary sense, and in this case, an animation sense.
Yes. Just circles.
Circles.
Yeah, and here again, you can see the majority of the action is done, but the amount of up and down to a sword, the bobbing to it, yeah, and I lean into it a little extra hard.
You like to get lost in the sauce.
I do. I mean, my style is a lot of squish, squash, bounce. I think that looks good. It's not necessarily a perfect thing for always, but looking at Spencer Wan, I think there's a lot of it with his stuff as well. So yeah, he cuts through, and you would throw if you're really committing to a cut, you'd throw it all the way down, but you can't you don't want to hit the floor or get stuck, so you kind of have to stop it after your cut. So you'd bring it up, but you can't, you want to bring it right back to your face, so it kind of wobbles in its little safe zone. Ideally in martial arts, a perfect cut does stop on a dime. Mm-hmm. But again, if I animated the way I want to be in martial arts, you actually lose some of the fun of it. So
Yeah.
unless you're specifically having like a master sensei character fight like a novice, at that point, yeah, show that sensei just, stop on a dime. He has that ability, that restraint, that discipline. But unless you're gonna show that back and forth, it's gonna be hard. Right there was another thing. Try to flip your animation every once in a while. Again, just like actual art. If your animation doesn't, like, if you flip it and it just looks broken, whether the perspective's off, the time, like, you'll notice those things. You'll be like, my timing's weird. Why didn't it feel weird there? You just got into a process and you got a little blind. It like I said, happens in quote unquote illustration or normal art, happens in animation too. But in animation, again, you could look fine for 20 frames,
and then it just goes wrong.
Yeah. And you're like, wow, my character moved to the left a lot and never found his balance again. So, things to continue considering. As we get close to the end, do you have any questions, Ace, as the not so animator here?
Not really. It's just fun to see just the animation process and how it all just flows. My one last question is, would you put yourself through this again?
I mean, what do you think I do with Hitcam most of the time?
No, I mean in this specific style.
Well, I mean, again, like as far as like the style and the proportions go, like I'm comfortable with stick figure stuff, but as far as like doing really solid timing and flourishes, I mean, makes the animation good. So yeah.
Yeah, I haven't really seen you. Like have a decently good time with animating. Because half the time you were just banging your head against the wall waiting for things to render.
Yeah.
Only for it to go just horribly wrong.
I mean, so that was actually that was one of the satisfying things about it. Like I started keyframe at the end a little bit, but majority of this was just drawing. It was just very traditional animation. So, but that's the time we have there. Please do comment other questions, tutorials you have for animation stuff or art tutorials. We'll keep working on them, and please comment stuff you want to see on our Etsy shop or what you'd support on Patreon. We are on our road to try to get 500 subscribers by the end of the year. And until then, rock and roll, keep drawing.
Bye.
Bye.